Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're zooming in on a fascinating corner of the sustainability world, the massive global pulp and paper industry. Specifically, we're exploring exactly how these large-scale manufacturers measure, define, and report their use of recycled materials. We're going to break down a very specific, highly influential standard today, the SASB standard RRP 430A.2. Okay, let's dive into this, because the way companies are required to disclose their raw material sourcing is getting incredibly sophisticated. The standards are demanding a level of transparency that goes way, way beyond just slapping a green recycling logo on a cardboard box and calling it a day. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll unpack recycled fiber disclosures, defined, recovered, and recycled materials, compare pre-consumer versus post-consumer sources, dive into the reality of life cycle trade-offs, and finally, look at strategic sourcing and LCA integration. But before we get bogged down in the technical definitions, I want you to really think about this for a second. Is recycled fiber always the perfect, consequence-free environmental choice? I mean, as consumers, we're heavily conditioned to believe that the word recycled automatically equals 100% green slam dunk, right? We toss our paper in the blue bin, we buy products with recycled packaging, and we feel like we've totally eliminated our environmental footprint. But as we're about to see through the incredibly rigorous lens of corporate ESG reporting standards, the reality of global supply chains makes this a much, much more complicated balancing act. There are hidden costs to everything, and understanding those costs is literally the entire foundation of modern sustainability reporting.
Section 1. Unpacking recycled fiber disclosures under SASB RRPP 430A.2.
What's really interesting about this framework is exactly where this specific metric sits. Down under the supply chain management section, you'll find the mandate RR-PP 430A.2. Under this standard, pulp and paper manufacturers absolutely cannot just make vague, generalized claims about being eco-friendly. They have to explicitly and transparently disclose the exact amount of recycled and recovered fiber they actually procure. And this requirement is comprehensive. It includes both the raw materials they're buying from third-party suppliers on the open market, as well as the materials they might be collecting directly through their own proprietary collection programs. Capturing both of these channels is absolutely vital. Why? Because it paints a complete, unvarnished picture of a company's total reliance on the circular economy versus their reliance on virgin forests. And importantly, this disclosure is firmly grounded in hard, undeniable data. Companies are legally required to report this overall volume in metric tons. This quantitative, data-heavy approach is huge for institutional investors, climate researchers, and financial analysts. It completely strips away the marketing fluff and the PR spin, giving us a standardized, comparable metric across the entire global industry. If a multi-billion-dollar company claims to be a pioneer in sustainable packaging, this specific tonnage is the exact number that proves whether they're actually moving the needle in their raw materials supply chain, or if it's all just talk. Section 2. Defining recovered and recycled materials based on the ISO 14021-1999 standard. Let's look closely at how the strict ISO standard officially defines recycled material. It's material reprocessed from recovered material by means of a manufacturing process and then made into a final product or a component. So the crucial point here is that there has to be a physical transformation. It's simply not enough to just collect a bunch of stuff in a warehouse. To earn the prestigious title of recycled material, in this context, the fiber must actually undergo a true manufacturing process to be completely reborn as a new component or a brand new final product. It's all about the completion of that loop. Now, contrast that previous definition with recovered material. This definition focuses entirely on the act of diversion. We're talking about material that was fully destined for the landfill or maybe slated to be burned in an incinerator for energy recovery, but was instead intercepted. It was rescued and collected to serve as a material input, stepping in to take the place of new virgin material. If you want to think about it simply, recovery is the rescue mission and recycling is the physical transformation. You simply can't have recycled material without first having recovered material. Section 3. Pre-consumer versus post-consumer, tracing the origin. Let's walk through this crucial comparison because where this rescued material actually comes from matters immensely. On one side of the coin, we have post-consumer material. This is what most of us naturally picture when we think of recycling. It's the Amazon cardboard boxes you break down at home or the massive bins of paper waste from a downtown office building. It's material that successfully reached its final end user, served its fully intended purpose, and is now being returned to the supply chain. On the flip side, we have pre-consumer material. This is industrial scrap diverted from the waste stream during the manufacturing phase itself.
But look closely at that parenthetical exclusion because it's a game changer. You absolutely cannot count rework, regrind, or scrap that is reclaimed within the exact same process that generated it. So if a massive cutting machine trims a paper roll and the loose trimmings fall to the factory floor and are immediately swept up and thrown right back into that same machine's hopper, that is not recycling. That's just basic manufacturing efficiency. The standard does not allow a company to pat itself on the back and label that as recycled content. To count, it has to truly be diverted from a separate, distinct waste stream.
Section 4. The life cycle trade-off reality and evaluating the true cost.
The SASB standard mandates that companies discuss exactly how they incorporate rigorous environmental life cycle analyses, or LCAs, into their raw sourcing decisions. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why that kind of analysis is so absolutely necessary. On the benefits side, you've got the undeniable, well-known perks of using recycled fiber. We drastically reduce the need for raw deforestation, we keep millions of tons of paper out of municipal landfills, and crucially, we prevent the potent greenhouse gas emissions, like methane, that happen when paper slowly rots in those landfills. But you have to look at the other side of the ledger, the consequences. Recovered paper is heavy, it's often wet, and it's spread out across thousands of different municipalities. Collecting it requires massive fleets of heavy garbage trucks, and transporting it back to a specialized paper mill consumes a huge amount of fossil fuels, generating significant transportation emissions. Furthermore, the physical processing of recovered fiber is incredibly intense. To make used paper usable again, you have to heat it, clean it, and often apply harsh chemicals to de-ink it. That process requires a vast amount of energy and generates its own localized air and water emissions. Companies are legally required to evaluate this exact trade-off. They have to run the math to prove they aren't inadvertently causing more environmental harm through heavy transportation and chemical processing than they're saving by avoiding virgin wood. It's a tricky balance.
Section 5. Strategic sourcing and LCA integration beyond just reporting. All of this complex data ultimately builds a comprehensive, high-level risk management profile. When the executives at a major paper company sit down to strategically decide between purchasing virgin wood or recycled fiber, they are navigating a highly complex web of market variables. They have to weigh the wildly fluctuating costs of recovered materials against the more stable costs of virgin wood. They have to evaluate actual, real-world supply constraints. Is there enough high-quality, clean, recycled paper actually available in the regional market to meet their production quotas? They have to deeply analyze local recycling infrastructure and even consumer behavior. Because if households are throwing the wrong types of plastics into their paper recycling bins, that directly degrades the quality of the fiber supply. They also have to constantly look ahead at looming government regulations, like upcoming mandates requiring minimum recycled content in all consumer packaging. But hey, this isn't just an exercise in risk mitigation. There is massive business opportunity hidden in these metrics too. Mastering these life cycle trade-offs allows for true product innovation. It gives these manufacturers the unique ability to engineer genuinely sustainable products that can command a premium price in the market, driving both increased corporate revenue and massive reputational benefits. It's also worth noting that to provide even more transparency to the market, the standard gives companies the option to disclose a detailed breakdown of their recycled and recovered fiber use by specific product segments. This is great because it allows institutional investors to see exactly which product lines, whether it's corrugated cardboard, high-end printing paper, or consumer tissue, are actually driving the company's sustainability transition. It offers a highly granular look at the company's day-to-day operational realities, essentially proving that sustainability isn't just a corporate-wide buzzword, but a targeted strategy integrated right into specific manufacturing lines.
Which brings us to our final thought for today's explainer. As rigorous standards like SASB RRP 430A, 2 force major global companies to publicly and honestly balance the scales, weighing landfill diversion against localized transportation emissions and strict pre-consumer definitions against basic manufacturing efficiency, we have to step back and ask, how will transparent life cycle trade-offs redefine what it truly means to be a sustainable manufacturer? Sustainability is clearly no longer just a marketing buzzword. It has evolved into a rigorous, data-driven science of trade-offs and net positive impacts. I hope this deep dive into the pulp and paper industry's reporting standards gave you a completely new perspective on the everyday materials you use, recycle, and rely on. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you on the next explainer.